What is a foreclosure and how can you get your hands on one? Hi, I'm George Lorimer. I'm a real estate broker here for 20 plus years in San Diego, California, and I get this question more than any. So, a foreclosure starts this way. Somebody's late on payment and they file what they call a NOD, Notice of Default, against the property. Once they do that, the buyer's behind, let's say, $3,000 a month for their mortgage for 6 months, so that'd be $18,000. So they file that as a NOD, a Notice of Default, and that becomes on sites like Zillow and Redfin, becomes a pre-foreclosure. So seller hasn't expressed any interest in selling it. Seller may have a bunch of equity. It might be worth $800,000. They might owe $300,000, but they haven't expressed any interest in selling it. They're just late on their payments. That's called a pre-foreclosure. So when you see those, you can't just go out and buy it for $18,000 or their loan of $300,000. They haven't expressed interest in selling it. So that's a pre-foreclosure. Now let's look at a foreclosure. So we go further down the same road. They owe $18,000. They've decided that they're not going to be paying it. Normally, the reason why a seller that $800,000 it's worth and it owes $300,000 wouldn't sell it and keep that $500,000 themselves is because they probably owe $850,000 and it's worth $800,000 and they let it go to foreclosure. Then what happens is once it's a foreclosure, the bank takes it back. They have investors, so they can't just sell to somebody. They have to sell it for full market value and get full market exposure. So once a bank takes it as a foreclosure, they'll decide to sell it to a private investor, to package it as a group of properties and sell it to a company, or they'll put it back on the open market with a realtor on the multiple listing service, and that'll be called a foreclosure. So that's what most people can buy when they buy a foreclosure. Here's a couple of important facts. Only 1 out of 100 that's late will actually go to foreclosure. So don't wait. If you want to buy it at foreclosure at the Courthouse Steps, you probably heard of that. So there's a notice of default, they're late with their payments, the bank owns it. Somewhere right at the end here, there's a Courthouse Steps, and it's basically a chance for anybody, including the current property owner, to redeem it and buy it back. So here's the thing about buying at the Courthouse Steps. You have to be all cash, you have to have a cashier's check, and you don't get what they call a clear title. You get the property in as-is condition strictly, because once they call the number and you bid on the Courthouse Steps at a foreclosure, you have to give the cashier's checks or the money right then. So there may be people living in it. There may be some cases it's even like burned down, or it doesn't match what's on tax records. So there's a lot of risk when you buy a foreclosure. Usually whole companies are set up to buy foreclosures at the Courthouse Steps. So more often than not, at the 1 in 100 that's late on their payments, that's a pre-foreclosure. When it ends up being a foreclosure, it will circle back and hit the open market. It will be listed on the MLS and it will be deemed a foreclosure. Here's the bad news. They usually sell it about 98% of market value. So if you're thinking to get a huge discount, that typically doesn't happen. So if I can help you with any explanation of this or other things that you see so that you can make a real decision on buying and selling, George Lorimer, 619-846-1244. Thanks.